shot in Florida. Chris Robinson produced that, and I helped him write it while I was there. We got together, yeah, a little bit. And
Ted Cassidy, the hidden life behind Lurch. Ted Cassidy wasn't just Hollywood's favorite giant. He was a man whose life was filled with untold stories, historic moments, and roles that shaped television without most of us ever realizing it. While most remember him as Lurch from the Addams Family, his true story is far more layered and far more heartbreaking. Let's start with the beginning, because this wasn't someone who drifted into fame. He sprinted toward it. Theodore Crawford Cassidy was born on July 31st, 1932, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but he spent most of his early years in Philippi, West Virginia. From the start, it was clear he wasn't like other kids, both in brilliance and in size. At just 6 years old, he was already sitting in a third-grade classroom. By 11, he was a high school freshman. And while most kids were still learning the rules of the game, Ted was already dominating on the football and basketball courts. But his rapid development wasn't just good genes. Ted had acromegaly, a condition that causes the body to produce excess growth hormone. As a result, he towered over his classmates and reached 6 feet 9 inches by the time he graduated. That should have made him a high school hero. Instead, it made him a target. Ted was bullied, called names like monster and freak, and cast aside by the same kids he studied and played with. His size made people uncomfortable. His intelligence intimidated them. It was a painful irony. He had everything on paper to be admired, yet he was completely alone. A new start and a new voice. Despite the social challenges, Cassidy pushed forward. He attended Wesleyan College in West Virginia before transferring to Stetson University in Florida. There, he played 3 seasons of college basketball and was active in student government. He even worked as a lifeguard along the Daytona and Ormond Beach coastlines. But Ted wasn't chasing an athletic career. He was falling in love with storytelling, specifically performance and voice work. After graduating with a degree in speech and drama, he married Margaret Helen Jesse in 1956. The newlyweds moved to Dallas, Texas, where he started working at local radio station WFAA. That voice, deep, resonant, instantly captivating, became his calling card. Cassidy quickly became a midday DJ, but his talents went beyond music. He started narrating commercials, acting in local television spots, and playing characters like Creech, an outer space creature on a campy show called Dialing for Dollars. It may sound silly now, but that small local gig was the first step towards something much bigger. The day history changed. November 22nd, 1963. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, just blocks from where Ted worked. As chaos unfolded, Cassidy went live on air, delivering one of the first real-time radio updates. Minutes later, he rushed to Dealey Plaza and interviewed eyewitnesses, including W.E. and Gail Newman, moments that are still preserved in archival audio. He was there, in the middle of it. Not as a celebrity or actor, but as a reporter, grounded, calm, and present during one of America's most shocking moments. It's something few fans know, yet it was one of the most important roles of his life. Even with a growing reputation in broadcasting, Cassidy never lost his love for music. Every day after his shift at the radio station, he'd head to Luby's Cafe at Lockwood Shopping Center. There, he'd play the organ for customers and collect tips. For hours, this towering man, known for his booming voice, would gently coax melodies out of an old piano, entertaining strangers just to stay close to his art. Behind the stage persona, Cassidy was grounded. He was raising 2 kids, Sean and Cameron, both of whom would later become successful lawyers. He was a husband, a father, and a working performer trying to make ends meet. But in Hollywood, his break hadn't come yet. The audition that changed everything. Ted was driving back and forth to California chasing acting jobs. Time and again, he heard the same thing. You're talented, but you're too tall. Casting directors couldn't figure out how to fit him into scenes without making the rest of the cast look tiny. Rejection became routine. Then he heard something different. ABC was holding a casting call. For tall actors only, Cassidy drove down expecting a circus of giants. And that's exactly what he got. Everyone there was at least his height or taller. It felt more like a basketball tryout than a casting session. But then he read the script. The role? Lurch, the silent butler in a spooky new sitcom called The Addams Family. Cassidy landed the part. It was supposed to be minor, just a looming presence. But something unexpected happened that turned the character into a pop culture legend. During a rehearsal, John Astin, who played Gomez, pulled a fake noose to ring the butler bell. Ted stepped in and in that booming voice growled, "You rang?" The room exploded with laughter. The director loved it. That one off-script moment became Lurch's iconic catchphrase and permanently altered the character's place in the show. The hidden layers of Lurch. Most fans only saw the grim face, stiff posture, and single-line deliveries. But Cassidy brought Lurch to life in a way that went far beyond what was written. His subtle facial expressions, comedic timing, and physical strength gave the character surprising depth. He wasn't just intimidating, he was lovable. And behind the scenes, Ted was doing double duty. Whenever the show needed Thing, the disembodied hand reaching out of a box, it was usually Ted's arm. The producers needed someone with long enough reach to make it look convincing, and he fit the bill. Occasionally, when Lurch and Thing shared a scene, someone else would step in. But most of the time, Cassidy was both characters. Even the show's musical moments came with a twist. On screen, Lurch was a harpsichord master. In real life, Cassidy was a talented pianist, but the producers wanted a particular sound and dubbed over the scenes with studio recordings. Ted didn't mind. He was just happy to be doing what he loved. But beneath all the laughs and fame, something darker was brewing. Cassidy was beginning to realize that Hollywood didn't see him as a full actor. They only saw a type, a gimmick, a giant. After The Addams Family ended, Ted Cassidy found himself trapped by fame. Lurch had made him a household name, but it also boxed him in. Everywhere he went, directors wanted him to play the same type of role, a mute brute, a towering henchman, or a non-speaking monster. For a man as articulate, creative, and thoughtful as Cassidy, it was insulting. He wanted to stretch his range, to be seen not just as the giant guy, but as a real actor. So he took a risk. He began turning down roles that mocked his height or cast him as a mindless creature. He only accepted parts that gave him dignity or depth. And just like that, the offers dried up. 6 months passed, and reality set in. Hollywood had no idea what to do with Ted Cassidy unless he was playing something non-human. Faced with financial pressure and a family to support, Cassidy made a difficult decision. He returned to the roles he had once rejected, but this time he made them his own. While acting roles were limited, Cassidy's voice was becoming legendary. He began narrating animated series, sci-fi shows, and even commercials with a voice so powerful it could shake a room. And the more characters he voiced, the more influence he had, without ever appearing on screen. He voiced Martians in The Angry Red Planet, monsters in Lost in Space, and even the eerie grunts of the Gorn creature in Star Trek's iconic Arena episode. On another Star Trek episode, What Are Little Girls Made Of?, Cassidy finally appeared in full costume as Rook, a creepy android with the strength to lift and throw Captain Kirk like a rag doll. Few fans knew it was him behind the makeup, but it was one of his proudest moments. And then came the cartoons. Cassidy's booming narration carried The Adam Ant Show, Frankenstein Jr. and The Impossibles, and The New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He voiced giants, creatures, villains, and even narrated entire episodes, shaping the tone of Saturday morning TV for a generation. It was during this voice acting boom that he quietly became one of the busiest men in television. In 1978, Cassidy took on a role that most people still don't realize was him, the Incredible Hulk. While Lou Ferrigno brought the character to life visually, Ted Cassidy was the one who voiced the Hulk's terrifying roars, groans, and growls. Even more iconic, That haunting opening narration that played at the beginning of every episode, the creature is driven by rage and pursued by an investigative reporter. David Banner is believed to be dead, and he must let the world think that he is dead until he can find a way to control the raging spirit that dwells within him. It was pure gold, dramatic, chilling, and unforgettable. Cassidy's voice was the soul of the show, even if he never appeared on screen. At the same time, he was doing voice work for Space Ghost, Jana of the Jungle, Yogi's Space Race, and the Fantastic Four, where he played Ben Grimm, the Thing. He narrated 16 episodes of Challenge of the Super Friends, voicing characters like Brainiac and Black Manta. He even did McDonald's commercials, voicing Officer Big Mac in a series of animated ads. From superheroes to Saturday morning cartoons to fast food mascots, Ted Cassidy was everywhere. You just didn't know it. A second chance at love and life. By the late 1970s, Cassidy's life was finally looking up again. He had recovered from a major health scare involving his heart, and for the first time in years, he felt healthy, energetic, and inspired. Even more importantly, he had found love again. He became engaged to actress Sandra Ego. The two planned to marry in May of 1979, and Cassidy seemed happier than he had ever been. He had finally made peace with Lurch, no longer resentful about being typecast. In interviews from the time, he even described the Addams Family as the best thing that had ever happened to him. It was as if he had finally embraced who he was and how he had quietly shaped generations of entertainment. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, tragedy struck again. In early January 1979, Cassidy began feeling unwell. He was admitted to the hospital and diagnosed with a benign tumor in his heart. Doctors scheduled emergency open heart surgery to remove it. The procedure went well at first, but in the days that followed, complications arose. His body, worn down from years of towering over everyone else, couldn't handle the recovery. On January 16, 1979, Ted Cassidy passed away. He was only 46 years old. Sandra honored him with a traditional Irish wake, and later, his ashes were scattered in the backyard of his home, the place where he had raised his kids, played piano, and memorized lines that made millions laugh. Legacy of a Gentle Giant. Ted Cassidy's story is more than just the tale of a tall man who played a spooky butler. He was a child prodigy, a first responder during a national tragedy, a loving father, a gifted pianist, and one of the most influential voice actors of the 20th century. He spent his life being typecast as a monster, but was one of the kindest, most thoughtful people behind the scenes. And maybe that's the most important part of his legacy. He never let the way the world saw him define who he really was. He made people laugh with a single line. He gave life to creatures that terrified us. He stood in the shadows so others could shine. And all the while, he left a mark most of us never noticed, until now. So the next time you hear that thunderous "you rang," or watch the Hulk burst through a wall in green rage, remember the man behind the moment, the man whose voice shook rooms, but whose heart was bigger than any of us knew.